Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do.
In this episode, I interview Beau Atkins, CEO of Evolve Family Law, Canada's first national family law firm who rebuilt legal practice from the ground up by throwing out the billable hour, applying behavioral economics to divorce, and building a 7-person team that operates like 700. Welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin, your host, and I'm thrilled today to have on Beau Atkins. Beau is the CEO of Evolve Family Law. He is also the co-founder of Simone Reception, and he is just a force of nature. I see him out there all the time on the conference circuit. He posts a lot on LinkedIn about what he's doing, and he seems to me to be a voracious reader and learner in life. And I think that's really important, especially right now with everything that's going on. He even finished a longer course right now in Claude Cowork to better understand that. I've really been impressed by Beau and the way that he's embraced change and learning as a way of growing not only as a lawyer, but as a person. So with that, Beau, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. Given the background there, we had talked a little bit off camera about the big moment in your life. And if you could share with us what's going on.
Yeah. So about a week and a half ago, I welcomed my second son into the world, 7 pounds, 2 ounces. So he's in the background. So hopefully he's napping and hopefully he won't be too disruptive. But
oh, no worries about that. Congratulations. That's amazing news.
Thanks so much.
And you had mentioned, with him coming into the world, especially right now with AI, that there's questions that we have, like about what the future looks like and what it's going to be like for our kids. Mine are a bit older. My older one just graduated from university from UBC, and my younger one is just finishing her first year. So it's a little different where they're at. But what are your thoughts about that, about AI and what the future holds for us and our kids?
Well, I struggled with it a little bit. And I mentioned to you just before we started, I watched the AI doc that came out about a month ago. And the documentarian is going through that same thing where he's super worried about all this emerging technology and what it's going to mean. You've got one camp who says they would never bring a kid into this earth because they don't think we'll even be around as a species by the time they hit high school. But then you've got another really optimistic camp. And I consider myself very privileged to be optimistic and share that vision where I think things are going to be okay. And I think they're going to be better than ever. It's going to be different. I'm not sure I'm pushing. Even I have a wide age range in my 2 kids. I've got a 17-year-old who's about to finish high school, and then almost 2-week-old. And I don't know that I'm pushing my 17-year-old to go to university as much as my parents were pushing me, because I don't know that it's going to be as important. I don't know though. I don't think any of us do. And so it's exciting regardless.
It's exciting. It's a weird time. I mean, I don't think any of us ever imagined that at this moment we would be at a point where, like, the script that we followed growing up and that our parents and even their parents followed would be just up in the air. And it would be, a question mark how to live a fruitful life. I think there's some things that don't change.
Yeah, and I know you've got a philosophy background, and I feel like that's not going to change. We're always going to be thinkers, and I think there's never going to be a more important time to think, to meditate, to sort of try to find stillness, which I know is a really hard thing to do with everything that's going on. But I think there's a lot of people saying that is going to be one of the most important traits that you can have.
That's deep, man. Like trying to find stillness, like that seems to be quite like a luxury right now to be able to find that.
I think it's it's in short supply, and we have so much. We're inundated with so much every day. There's a new release every day, and I think it's tough not to feel capsized by the amount of material coming at you. But I think being able to just sit for a moment, device free, that's helped me keep my sanity.
1,000%. That's amazing. Good advice for everyone out there. As everyone knows, I like to get into people's origin stories, and I'd love to ask you about that. So, right now, you're in Saskatoon.
I am, yes.
Okay. Did you grow up there? Like,
No,
where did you grow up?
I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, next to the Rocky Mountains. Spent most of my life there until around 2006. I was maybe about 24. I took a year semester in Mexico. So I moved down there for 6 months, ended up buying a van and living in it, took it all over the place.
Not down by the river.
By whatever beach you mostly it was broken down in every town I passed through. It was really beat up, but yeah, really insane experience. So that was my first time really leaving Calgary.
Yeah.
And I spent a year in Victoria at the University of Victoria, finishing up my political science degree. From there, short stint back in Calgary before moving to Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, where I'd never been before for university, and just sort of stuck around after that.
All right, let's unpack that a little bit. So, a few steps back in Calgary, what was the neighborhood like? Like, for those that are not familiar with that area, especially at the time you were growing up, give us a snapshot of what that felt and looked like.
Oil is the industry in Alberta. And so it was a boom and bust province. You'd always see license plate or bumper stickers that said, Lord, please give me another boom like the 80s, and I promise not to waste it. And then you'd see, Lord, give me another boom like the 90s, I promise not to waste it. So every decade had that bumper sticker. Where I grew up, it was a suburb. We were sort of, now it's almost inner city the way Calgary has grown. But it was basically a town of, I think, a city of maybe 400,000 people when I was growing up. And it's ballooned, and I think it's 1.4, 1.6 million now. So it really ballooned in the time that I lived there and shortly before I left.
You give us an idea of your family, like your mom and dad. Like, what did they do? How many siblings do you have?
So I've got two brothers that I grew up with, both younger. I've got an older sister that I met only a couple of years ago. She was given up for adoption when my mom was 17 or 18. So I've connected with her since. She's a half sibling living in Minnesota. But growing up, my mom was a waitress, worked various odd jobs. My dad was a bricklayer. Like I said, we grew up it would probably be a medium income household, played lots of sports growing up, otherwise fairly normal. I talk a lot about it because I think it influenced my trajectory in life. When I was 14, my parents separated and got divorced ultimately. And I think that was probably one of the things that had the biggest impact in shaping what I do today.
With your mom and dad, I mean, they both worked very hard to support you and your brothers. Did you get any inspiration from them in terms of what you wanted to study in university, or even going to university? Like, was that something that was emphasized to you?
Not so much. I definitely get my curiosity and my drive from my mom, get a lot of work ethic from my dad. I've really contemplated the things I've been given by them. My mom had a computer really early on. She was always, it's amazing. Like I'm a huge reader. I read all this stuff, and then I go to my mom's house, and she's got these books that I've read that she probably bought as they were coming out. Books like Emotional
Wow.
Intelligence by Goldman, and Seven Habits, Stephen Covey. Like, she's got these things. She was reading them as they were coming out. So I had never really appreciated that at the time, but I definitely get that sense that I've being gifted that trait from her.
That's amazing. I hear it a lot with the different stories of talking to people that there are these things that we inherit from our parents that at first we don't see them or take, we take it for granted. There's something about, growing up, adulting, where you have that distance from your parents that you see them, you finally see them as human beings that have their own aspirations and their own like interests and curiosities that when we're young, we just don't have the distance or perspective to see that.
Yeah, it's odd though, because I've done a lot of diving into my ancestry recently, almost an obsession, obsessed curiosity. From my research, I was the first person to get a university degree in my lineage, as far as I could tell. And so my generation, myself and my brothers, were the first people to go through that. And so certainly first evidence of lawyers in the family as well that I could tell.
Well, share a little bit more about that. Like, what is your lineage? Where do your people come from?
All over the place, but very deep Canadian and American ancestry, going back to the 1700s. It looks like, and a lot of this has just been research on ancestry that I've done, but it looks like I've got relatives that came in on the Mayflower, awkwardly, both on my mom's and dad's side, suggesting that they're 15th or 16th cousins.
Well, that's
16
far enough apart.
Yeah, exactly. 16 generations ago. So it's ChatGPT tells me that's very normal. But I've got one side of my family that came to Quebec when it was New France, way back in 1630, 1640. I have some Irish ancestors that came over during the famine in the 1850s. And so sort of all over the place. I sort of have the perfect circumstances for being able to track all of that because they were Catholic, Anglo-Catholic for the most part. So there's fairly accurate records.
Yeah.
And when I say an obsessed curiosity, I mean an obsessed curiosity. Like I have visited cemeteries and headstones now for about 60 of my direct ancestors. So that's grandfathers and grandmothers down the line. So it's been sort of I think it was a mission to learn more about myself. I have a theory that we're largely algorithmic, just like computers right now. The way we have this genetic code that things are on, things are off, and we really don't know why. My theory is there's something to discover there. And so that's sort of fueled that curiosity I've had.
And that's one thing that has impressed me about you, Beau, is that, and this is, not the first time, you have this quality of thinking deeply about things, about introspecting about, different things that come up. So it's not what you would typically hear on, in a LinkedIn post or you talking about things publicly. It's things that go, a few levels deeper. And I really appreciate that because I think that we need more of that. We need, we need more of being in touch with ourselves. And that idea that you have, I think that there's some weight to it. What you got from your mom in terms of being almost, on the same page, literally, with the books that you're reading. And I've seen it myself. If I learn about different, relatives, ancestors, and what they've done, and it seems like there's a bit of a groove there that kind of repeats itself.
A lot of the root of the curiosity has been a lot of the psychology books I've read. So things like Influence by Robert Cialdini or Daniel Kahneman. I loved the stuff Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky did. Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow is the big one that he released, where basically you have these two psychologists who overnight with their discoveries became economists. They basically created behavioral economics by disrupting a field that had existed for 400 years. Economists for years had all these theories, but were treating people as if they were rational and reasonable. And a lot of that, how I relate it to what I do, I think we do the same thing in law. We have a reasonable person test. We treat everybody as if they should be rational actors. In economics, they've already accepted that's not rational to treat everyone like they're reasonable people because we aren't. We make all sorts of decisions with bias. Even when we turning it to legal, we know that about judges. We know they bring in bias. We know they make worse decisions before lunch than they do at the beginning of the day. We know that. I think what was Malcolm Gladwell explored how judges perform barely better than an algorithm, or no, barely better than a coin toss. The algorithm beat them on determining recidivism rates when granting bail. It's really made me wonder, why do we make some of these decisions? Why do we have the bias? We know we have it, but I don't know that a whole lot of people have explored why. I think that's the answer. I think a lot of the ancestors are genetics.
Let's tie this into what you've been doing. You founded your own family law firm. That was 6 years ago.
Yeah, in 2020.
Yeah, evolve. One thing for people watching that I've noticed with what Beau's done is he's taken a very systematic approach to building the firm and having talented people to help him with the different aspects of building a firm, which is Canada's first national family law firm. Did any of these thoughts lead you along the way of founding your own family law firm, and how so?
No, I think a lot of those thoughts have come after. But in terms of founding Evolve, I was on the cusp of leaving law altogether. I was frustrated in 2019. Evolve is the second law firm I've built. The first, I had two partners, and I was just frustrated with how it was operating as a business. I felt I was constantly putting in way more time than I would have liked to. I wasn't making as much money as I thought. When I looked at my other entrepreneurial friends who seemed to really be enjoying what they were doing, having freedom of time, having a purpose, I felt that I was missing that, and I thought, I need to essentially leave law, build a different business that I can be satisfied with, and that I can find some purpose and joy in. And it was actually, I went to a conference in San Diego and connected with a number of the speakers, excellent speakers. Took a tour of the USS Midway, really impressive battleship. And I remember thinking, wow, if people can build something like this, surely I can figure out building a law firm that operates like a business. Because I'd really been diving into, when I made the decision that I was going to leave law, I figured, okay, I need to start reading up and basically learn about business. So I was reading books like Jim Collins, stuff from Jim Collins, and E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, and just all of these business focused books. And by the time I was done that, and I attended this conference, I realized I don't need to leave law. I just need to break it all down to the ground and rebuild it on the foundations of how a good business runs, using best business practices, ignoring. I was almost allergic to anything that law firms were doing, trying to forge it from the ground up.
That's a smart move, and one that I think and wish that lawyers would employ more, which is kind of going back to first principles, looking at it as if we're starting from scratch, looking at it as if clients come first, looking at it with a sense of empathy, and then everything follows from that.
Yeah, and I think I'm not sure if it's Richard Susskind or Jordan Furlong that have the quote, try convincing a room full of millionaires that there's a problem with their business model. That's what I perceived, is you had lawyers who were just stuck in this loop, and it was working and it was paying the bills and they were surviving, so there just wasn't any motivation to change it. And I know it's Furlong who discusses, when you've got the decision makers who are at the top in that sort of pyramid style model that traditional law firms have, there's very little motivation at the top to change anything. And I think that's going to be a big reason why you'll have a lot more agility and movement for small firms disrupting what has traditionally been big law.
Well, I'm curious about if we jump back a little bit in time to, your experience at university, you went off to Tecnológico de Monterrey when you were in Mexico for a little while, and then going to law school. Were there any experiences there, and also like some of the jobs that you've had other than being a lawyer? Did those contribute to the mindset that you're talking about your ability to get to that place?
I used to be a tile setter. I put myself through university working various construction jobs, and tile setting was one of the main trades that I was in. And I think that definitely helped shape the way we operate. We started out we got rid of the hourly rate. That was one thing where I recognized that was not a best business practice. It was dumb luck that I recognized that before this whole AI wave, because I do think that any lawyers that are still charging an hourly rate and are taking advantage of the time efficiencies, but not passing that on to the client. So if you're billing by the hour, but you're value billing at the same time, quite frankly, I consider that fraud. I think it's like a grocer with a finger on the scale. If what you're charging an hour for did not take you an hour, I think it's criminal. But I had no foresight that we would have this massive influx of efficiency at our doorstep within a few years. Back to your question, when you're asking about how jobs influenced my philosophies or how I built the business, my view was when I was a tile setter and people wanted me to quote a job or look at work, build a backsplash or whatever, they would ask me to show up with a tape measure. They'd show me the material they want, where they want it installed. I'd take my measurements, I'd see where the cuts had to be, and I would have to give them a price right out of the gate. And that was an expectation. If it was going to be different than that, I would have to have a conversation before I did the work.
Mm-hmm.
I found that same thing didn't exist. At least it didn't exist in my jurisdiction when it came to law. I'm the expert, even though we can't say we're experts. I should know what I'm doing. I should be able to assess what it's going to take and provide some sort of cost or fee certainty, at least from A to B. I might not be able to quote out A to Z, but I should be able to quote out little parts, so at least they have some control over how much the thing is going to cost. I quote Jordan Furlong a lot, but he talks about what it is lawyers actually sell. We sell peace of mind, or we sell certainty. And when you look at the hourly rate, that's essentially lawyers shirking that responsibility, or the deliverable clients are coming for. The very first opportunity they have to give their clients certainty, they're giving an hourly rate rather than saying, here's what we have to do, here's how much it's going to cost. And so that's one thing I borrowed from my past as a working in construction, is providing those fixed fee estimates, and then always making sure to have that difficult conversation before the work actually happens, so that everyone was on the same page.
And it sounds to me like, I mean, that follows from caring about the customer, about what their expectations are, and that you're on track to meet them and even exceed them. And I would point out to everyone that it's not, attorneys might have that knee-jerk reaction that we tend to have, which is, oh, this is different. It's much more complex. And like, it depends on X, Y, and Z variables about how much is this going to cost. So it only makes sense to do it hourly. And I would point out to everyone that, what Beau described about, you show up to some work site, if they have the old tile in there and they're asking you to put new tile in, making an estimate on the spot is you're taking a bit of a risk as well as the tile setter, because that could come out easy or it could come out hard. It could take you a lot longer than you would ever expect to remove the old tile. And then, maybe the tile that they want to go in, that it needs to sit at a deeper depth than what they thought. And then you have to use more supplies and stuff. So there's a lot of variables there too, right?
Totally. And that's one thing I often say when people say, oh, this is different, it's complex.
Yeah.
I think building a house is complex. Start top to bottom. You generally nowadays don't have one person who does every task inside that house, but every single aspect of it is quoted typically, and you're able to budget accordingly, rather than just saying, here's a blank check and tell me when it's done.
And it's about time that we carry over that
Well,
to
I think it's the reality is I know I've seen a lot of people talking about the death of the billable hour. I don't think it's going to be a voluntary thing. I think it's going to be something that the market just takes care of, because once you have enough lawyers who are offering those flat fees, I think it just becomes too attractive for the market to pass up.
besides the business and the fees, there's also like the heart and I think empathizing with your client. And so I want to talk a little bit about a post that you made recently, but it's not in isolation. You know, this is a part of the work you've been doing as a family lawyer. But you had posted about basically like the kind of advice that you would give your friends, family, and anyone that you had hoped you had gotten about divorce and dealing with that and relationships. And tell us a little bit about that.
I've thought deeply on this as well. I've thought about my own parents' divorce, and now as a divorce attorney, how I would have guided them. And of course, it's different because, of course, I was inside of that bubble. I lived it. It was lived experience. But I had the opportunity a few years ago to actually look at my parents' divorce. My mom has it in a box still. And I was somewhat reluctant because I've seen those things. I've seen how
Yeah.
nasty they get. I thought, no, this for science. I have to look into this to
Yeah.
see what it was like. And I was impressed because for the most part, they handled things well. There's always missteps in family law. You're dealing with people. Again, if we're not rational at the best of times, you're certainly not rational as you're going through this. You're the
Right.
worst version of yourself. In knowing that, again, back to my research on behavioral economics and how we make decisions, there's another book called Nudge by Cass Sunstein and Richard Thaler that talk about choice architecture. So as we're going through different experiences, we know we're not reasonable. If we can design choices and design our environment, we can make better choices as a result by certain nudges. And one of the nudges I encourage a lot of people who are going through separation, especially if if you have children, is never call that person your ex. That is not your ex-husband. That is not your ex-wife. That is your son's mom or your children's mom or your daughter's dad. Because for one, that's a nudge. That's one thing you can say inside your mind. It's a lot harder to use expletives when you're talking about your son's mom than it is your ex-wife. For myself, that was something I fell into because I went through a separation in law school. And I did that for myself and don't deserve any credit for it because I think it was more a survival mechanism I used for myself, because I recognized every time I say ex-wife or hear ex-wife, I have like just this tinge of anger inside me. Whereas when I say my son's mom, the focus shifted and now it's happier. Certain things like that, but there's tons of examples of things that I think people could be doing while they're separating to give themselves a better experience and, more importantly, give their kids a better experience.
I just keep nodding my head to everything that you're saying because it's it's not the practice of law. It's not, being a lawyer, but we are also, called counselors at law, and it requires a certain being present and like understanding how things are affecting us and our clients. And I think that's such a valuable thing for you to share with people. You'd also like mentioned in that post that somebody's sitting in a chair across from me, it's already too late. And that fortunately you do have friends or family or people that know you that come up to you and ask you and thankfully engage you prior to being in the chair across the desk.
Yeah, that's and I'll give credit to James Sexton, who's a divorce attorney out of New York, wrote a book titled, I think it's If You're in My Office, It's Already Too Late. And that's a reality. I think a lot of people have a view that if they're going through a separation, they need to lawyer up. They need to speak with lawyers. You mentioned counseling. I always tell my clients, some of the advice I give is life advice, is counseling, but I am the least qualified, most expensive counselor you'll find anywhere. That's where I would push them first. And I think that's a bit of a nudge. People need a nudge. Work on the root problems, because if you're getting a separation, I understand the numbers in separation to be around, people throw out the number 50% of marriages end in divorce. I don't know if that's exactly true, but I do know it goes up. The number of second marriages that end in divorce is higher than first. Number of third is higher than second, and it escalates. And I think a big cause of that is people not working on the root issue. If you're getting separated because of something you're doing, you're just going to carry that into your next relationship. That's the nudge a lot of people can use, is towards improving themselves, improving how they handle things, how they respond to things. It will improve how they separate and treat their co-parent. It'll improve how they parent.
So if you don't mind, I want to segue a little bit into AI. You had recently finished that course on co-work. That it wasn't just a small course either. Like, it took a while for you to get through it because there's a lot of good information and background on using it. What I like about co-work and like the skills-based AI approach is that it's a way that we can literally pass on what we know by externalizing knowledge. And it's a new paradigm that prior to this, somebody quit, walked out the door, good luck. And I imagine that you've thought quite a bit about this, as well as, this idea that you're mentioning of nudges and kind of having this architectural approach about setting out what we allow ourselves to engage in and what we don't, by having this thought through approach to it. I'm just curious about your ideas.
I have a relatively small team. So I recognize, again, I've got the privilege of being able to tell everyone, this is not coming after your jobs, because we've got a great team. This is going to massively enhance our capacity. And we will, with 7 of us, we will be able to perform like we're 700. And I say I have that privilege because I wouldn't want to necessarily have a business that has 700 people or 7,000 people, because I don't know how you get away from AI taking jobs and replacing people. We'll save that somber discussion for another time. What we're trying to do is scale things. That has been my vision when I started Evolve back in 2020, is I wanted to build like a TurboTax or an H&R Block equivalent for family law. I wanted to make it accessible. One of the biggest facts that pushed me in this direction was a Legal Trends report saying 80% of people who have a legal problem aren't going to lawyers. And I think you just came up with your legal aid plugin. Kudos to you, by the way. And it suggests, what was the number? 92% of people needing civil legal aid don't get access to it.
Yeah.
That's horrible. Imagine 92% of hungry people just don't have access to food. That's crazy. That's the goal, is to increase the capacity. And as we do that, it's going to allow us to serve more and more people with taking less and less time and resources on our end. So that's the thing that I'm most excited about with everything that AI is unlocking right now.
Do you think it'll also lead to a better quality of service?
I think it will lead to a range of quality of service. Again, when we talk about what lawyers are actually selling, if it's certainty or peace of mind, if you put that on a spectrum from 0 to 100, right now, lawyers who don't even know what they're selling are just aiming to sell 100% peace of mind or certainty. A lot of clients don't want that. We generally don't deal with high net worth or high income people. It's usually low to mid. And as a result, there's a lot of instances where they say, hey, I don't care if it's 50-50 exactly. We might have $30,000 of assets to split. If we're aiming to get each party $15,000 each, they're going to spend $30,000 in legal fees just getting there. For some people, it says, give me $10,000, I'll walk away and not have to pay all those legal fees. And so it's really finding that balance. Not everyone wants an exact figure. And for some people, I think that's a disservice. If you can just get them through it, there's a value to that itself.
Yeah, the getting them through it. I think it was Jordan Furlong too, right? Who talked about one of the things that we do as lawyers is to accompany our clients, to be there for them. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's part of what human lawyering will continue to be.
Yeah, maybe, but I like going back to Susskind, where he talks about people who say the personability of lawyers. I think he used the example of the research showing it takes doctors 18 seconds into an appointment with a patient to interrupt them with a diagnosis. And Susskind jokes, the lawyers in the room say, "What took so long?" I don't know that we have the best bedside manner. I don't know that we are the best counselors. I think what AI is going to do is further segment that role. So it isn't necessarily the lawyer doing the hand holding. And the lawyer will still have a place, but it's not going to be the jack of all trades that it has been.
How great that will be to make the tent larger and have more people helping, because that's the least that we can do is just try to help out more with the people that we can extend this to. And everyone has their own strength. There is not that lawyer non-lawyer divide. There's really just we trying to help the people who need it with their legal issues.
Right.
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions that I ask everyone that I have the fortune to talk to. One, and I know this definitely applies to you, Beau, is that with a lot of things going on, how do you keep a work-life balance? Like, is there such a thing? What do you think?
I think I stack things. We talked a little bit about stillness. I find that in certain habits can actually enhance the amount of time that you have and the amount of energy you have. Sleeping is a big one. I found the more I slept, the more I could actually get done. The more I focused on that as a habit. Same thing with exercise. The more I exercise, the more hours in the day I seem to have, even though I actually had less. I was just doing a lot more in those times. But also, I'll combine things. I take my son with me to conferences. We've made it turn those into family trips. I'll watch documentaries like the AI doc. I'll watch that with him. So it's sort of we're bonding. It might not be his favorite. I have to trade that, and we had to also go see Hail Mary at the same time, same trip. But just combining things like that.
I think that's great. And leads naturally to the next question, which is when you do all of the things that you're involved with, from running the law firm to the new startup that you have, to being a father, what makes it worthwhile for you at the end of the day?
I've mentioned a lot of books, so I'm going to mention one more. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It was really important for me to dive into what I felt my purpose was and what it was all for. And I've identified that my purpose is to make life better. And it's a broad statement, but that's also what we've designated the purpose of Evolve Law in everything that I do. I want to make life better. And so long as what I'm doing is helping me fulfill that purpose, I have energy and excitement to how I approach it.
Well, those are amazing words of wisdom, and I can see that you live your life by it. Thank you so much, Beau, for being on the show today.
Thank you. It was awesome.
And for the audience that's watching, if they want to keep in touch with you and learn more, how can they do that?
LinkedIn is best. That's where I'm most active. I've sort of taken I look at the writing that you do and a number of others, and I've now included that as my title, a writer. I've found a lot of joy in doing actual writing, not just AI produced stuff. It'll help me edit maybe, but LinkedIn is where I live.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff going on there. And it's a great way for all of us to keep in touch. So thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I want to thank all of you for watching. It's been a wonderful time talking to Beau, and I hope you keep in touch with him, with me. and I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.